Hey guys, what's going on? Hey chillins, what should we talk about today? They're like, Truth or Talk, you cut your hair. I didn't actually. The shrinkage is real, you guys. If you guys don't know about shrinkage, this will trip you out. Go Google the number 4, and then C, and then shrinkage, and then images. That will trip you the fuck out. Like people that hair this short and then they stretch it, it's like down to their ass. Mine's just like maybe down to my shoulders if I were to straighten it. The back of my hair down here to my shoulders if I pull it out, and it's not even all the way straight. But anyway, like I ain't doing that shit no more. I ain't putting no Illuminati chemicals in my head. I'm done with the creamy crack. Anyway, hey guys, I wanted to, there are a lot of things I want to talk about. I think I'm going to talk about why I stopped teaching. Yeah, because I've been thinking about that lately. I had a woman, I think it was a woman, someone in the comments saying, oh, it's so great that you weren't brainwashed by the school system. And I was like, girl, I was the system. That's why I quit. It was awful. So I started off, I used to be a teacher. I was born and raised in LA. I worked for LAUSD. I started off, I was a long-term sub for 8 years, and I actually made about as much money as a teacher, probably even more, because when you're a sub, if you make good connections to schools, you can move around to different schools, and then you work pretty much every day. But I would do long-term subbing after the schools got to know me, so I would sub for months at a time. I did a lot of special ed work. I did charter schools. I work with kids all the way from like 4 for preschool daycare all the way up to 18. In South Central. That was kind of like my primary area. I wanted to go back and teach in the community where I grew up, so I worked there for about maybe 8 years. And then I thought about being a special ed teacher, because they really need them badly with all of the vaccines that cause autism and stuff, making the kids autistic. I mean, it's growing exponentially, so they really need teachers. And I worked one school, my cousin was a teacher, and another school, my 6th grade teacher, who I haven't talked to him all, but I pretty much stay in touch with him to this day. He was a teacher at another school. And I was like, I'm thinking about becoming like a permanent teacher. And they both were like, don't do it. And they're great teachers. They were phenomenal teachers. They had a passion about teaching. And I just watched as, the system has just sucked the life out of them. Because as a teacher, you're not told, you are told what to teach and how to teach. And there was this system, I don't know if it's in place now, but called reading system called Open Court. And we'd, joke, the other teachers would joke and call them like the Open Court Nazis, not knowing about, the Prussian system and Charlotte Iserby and John Taylor Gatto at that point, before I got into that. But at the time, we would joke about it because, they would be really staunch on telling you how to teach this system and showing you that you had to teach it a certain way. And I remember I even got in trouble because I wasn't teaching the kids the way that they wanted me to teach. I was teaching the subject matter, like the ABCs, but I was like, I don't like this. I was like, I don't like these books. I'm gonna bring in my own stuff, and I'm gonna teach in my own way, and I'm gonna use toys, and I'm gonna do some, and they were like, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, oh shit. And I got in trouble for doing it. But at the time I was like, why can't, I'm like, if they're learning what they need to learn, why does it matter how I teach them, So I almost start about, and I also got really I got really discouraged with the system, because the school system is messed up. I would not put, if I had kids, I would not put them in this public school system. I would homeschool my kids. Maybe get them into a Montessori school or something like that, where I can monitor them and they're not getting indoctrinated to be, test-taking machines. But, you have the layer of what they're being taught. They're constantly being dumbed down. It starts, from grade 1. And think about this too. The system is set up. Parents go to work, they go to school. The school is basically like a babysitter for kids. And the school has your kids' brains for 8 hours a day. And they want to start it even earlier, right? 8 hours a day. 9 months out of the year, 5 days a week. That's a lot of indoctrination. I'm just saying, think about it, right? The teachers are brainwashed as well. They don't really realize what's going on. They're just, they need teachers so bad that, and there are a lot of teachers who don't want to be teachers. A lot of teachers who hate children. Sorry to say, but there are a lot of teachers that you're just like, I love kids, but, they're teachers that they're teaching because they need a job and they need teachers. And, and a lot of these teachers were assholes, like emotionally abusive and just like psychotic themselves. And, anyway, so you have that going on. You have that level. You have all of these antipsychotics they're putting kids on, in order to, but like 5-year-olds, they're not supposed to be sitting still for 8 hours a day. So I don't see why you would have to put them on antipsychotics or antidepressants or all this stuff, and then the kids would freak out, So that's another tier, that's another layer. Then you have the immigrant problem that people don't want to talk about because they don't want to be, seen as being a racist. But it's a huge problem. It's part of it's the reason why schools are overcrowding, but nobody wants to say it's because of the illegal immigrants that are coming into the school that come and get free school and free lunch and everything that we pay for. Which there's a caveat to that, because I love those kids. I don't have anything against immigrants or people as people, but when you're putting a bunch of people in an area of a city where there's not enough resources, it becomes a problem. Nothing personal to the people, but if I were to move to a different country and, a lot of Americans would move and they'd have the same thing, it would be the same thing, like it's just a matter of resources per area. And then the fact that we're paying our money for these resources, then Americans have to come first. Like if I were to move to Mexico, I wouldn't expect them to put their citizens before me. I wouldn't. And they don't do that. And they have illegal immigrant issues as well. And a lot of them, they have a lot of Koreans that go in Mexico, and there's a lot of tension there because of the illegal immigrants there. So, and then you have the language barrier, right? I can speak Spanish, but a lot of teachers don't. And that was a huge issue when having to talk to parents, when having to talk to kids, to slow down the kids and going back and forth. They have ESO classes, but it's still like, resources taken away from the students, and it doesn't really create like a very balanced learning environment. Like it doesn't, and it's just sucks for everybody. Okay. What else is bad? The test taking, they're turning these kids into automatons, these robots, right? I mean, and nobody put it better than this lady. I moved to Taiwan after I lived there for 2 years after I decided I still wanted to teach. I wanted to do ESL and I wanted to travel the world teaching. So I got my TOEFL, TOEFL, and TESOL certificate. And I moved there for a year, and I liked it so much I stayed another year, and I taught adults the second year. The first year I taught kids. And what was I going to say? I thought it would be better in Asia. I thought it would be better. That's why I moved. I thought the system would be better. It's not. It's not. Different problems. Some of the same problems, different problems. I would say like in South Central, a lot of the kids also are falling behind. They don't have that community support. I noticed in Asian culture, there's a lot of community support. Even like what happens is that the kids there, they go to regular school, and then they go to Bushy Band, which is called like after school English school, basically for 2 hours a day so they can learn English. And either these kids are rich or the whole family was working like 3 extra jobs in order to send their children to this school. So because they know that English is a lingua franca, it's very competitive, and you can't really get anywhere, far on this planet without learning English. I mean, it just is what it is. So it's $1 billion industry. English, I mean, it's so important, but it sucks because it's another way that they indoctrinate people too, because all of the mainstream English newspapers and, news programs and all the stuff, they have all the same propaganda. which my brother doesn't really understand the difference between. It's going to be in another video of how I'll have to talk about that later. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but anyway, and I feel bad because I would tell my kids, I was like, what? You want to improve the English? Watch CNN. What did I, like, oh my God. At the time, watch BBC. Like, they speak correct English and it was good. And I mean, in a sense, that's good. That is true. But the fact that they basically report lies all the time, and they report stuff as if it's absolute, that there are no other points of view, and that's it. There's no other point of view. There's no other way of looking at things. And if you believe this, then they're a conspiracy theorist. And even I noticed in some of when I started to wake up, I noticed in a lot of like the textbooks and school supplies that we were given to teach the kids, they would kind of add little jabs here and there at people that question things. They've questioned official stories, and that started to piss me off. And then I started learning about GMOs too. I didn't know that about the time, and I would always bring my kids like cookies and sugar and chips, and then when I was like, oh my God, I'm poisoning my kids, I'm poisoning them. But then I start to make them kale chips and healthier stuff, and I clean that up. But or I would reward them with like pencils and erasers, and not like, just poison basically every day. I had a kid that would get McDonald's every day, and I watched her become a skinny girl and transform to a morbidly obese kid by the end of the year. I'm not kidding. It was crazy. So, I mean, the school system, the food, my cousin, I have another cousin too that's a teacher in New York. And I come from a family of teachers, by the way. So my grandmother was a teacher, my uncle was a teacher, my aunt was a teacher, my mom was a teacher's aide. I have a lot of teachers in my family. I've had other cousins that were like English teachers. And I mean, it's just teacher. So I have another cousin that was teaching in New York, and we would talk. We were just on the phone one day talking. We were just like, why do the kids always seem crazy when they come back from lunch? And I would just be like, and I was kind of thinking it was the food. And then I was talking to her. She was like, it's the food. Because my cousin, her daughter's autistic, and she did a lot of research on food and chemicals and stuff to kind of get her daughter in a balanced state. So when she started, having to make her daughter's lunch and, kind of like getting away from like the processed stuff, then we kind of put together that the food that they're feeding the kids is also making them mentally unstable. I mean, it's just so many levels of fucked up in the system, like what I touch on, the immigration issue, the antidepressants, the food, the test taking, the indoctrination, and then I dipped out right before I had to teach all that fucking transgender shit to kids. I don't care. Like, I have gay friends. I've had a trans friend. It wasn't as common when I was younger as it is now. I don't care, about them I care, but I'm like, I don't have anything against them as people, but I don't think you should be teaching kids about, sex toys when they're 7. And I have gay friends that believe the same thing. Like, not all gay people think that that's cool, like to be like teaching stuff. This is what you do. You teach your kids to treat people right no matter who they are, and then you won't have any issue. So this whole thing about people being more tolerant, that's bullshit. It's basically there are a lot of chemicals in their environment that I believe is a factor that can contribute to people having gender fluidity and being homosexual, as in animals, because a lot of the chemicals in the environment, animals, it's that, or there's also, molestation and rape, that also makes people, that's also, I think, a factor in homosexuality and transgenderism, as in animals too, because animals rape and they do stuff too, they really do. Like, you should look it up if you don't know. It's really interesting. We can only assume what animals think, but we don't know. We can't like really speak their language. We don't know what they think, about that. We don't know if, certain animals are traumatized or how it affects them, because we can't put them in therapy and you know what I mean? It's like, so, I went on a tangent. I'm sorry. What was I talking about? But teaching kids about this stuff, it's like we have the sick society, and instead of trying to address the problem, we're telling kids to hack off their body parts and it's okay, instead of trying to address it. Like, something is seriously fucking wrong here. So, oh, I know, I went on a tangent. So a lady in Taiwan, I was about to leave, come back to the States, and she was like, oh, I want you to private tutor my daughter, because I had a couple private tutoring gigs there too. And I was like, well, I'm leaving, why don't you just send her to a Bushy Band? She was like, oh, I don't want to turn my student into a test taking machine. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. She said to this day, she articulated that in the most perfect way. And she was one of these people that can kind of sort of speak English. She was like, oh, I'm sorry for my English. I was like, girl, your English is great. Like, what are you tripping about? And then she was like, just broke it down. And then, you know, there's that other issue, especially in Asian culture, where they, you know, all they do is study. There's no rarely any innovation. They don't ask questions. So they're like being turned into robots, right? And then when I came back to the States, I taught for 3 years at a Chinese prep school. And my kids, I had a lot of kids from China. I had a lot of kids that were ABC, which is like American born Chinese. I had a few kids from Vietnam. I had this one kid that was Russian, dude. He was Chinese. He was a Chinese Russian. He looked Chinese, but he had a full-on Russian accent. He'd be like, hello, my name is Boris. I swear to God, his name was Boris. It was crazy. He spoke like Russian and Chinese. Anyway, it was great. I mean, I love those kids. I love all my kids. I love my white kids, the Latino kids, black kids, Asian kids. Like, I love those kids. The kids are always the best part of the gig, by the way. Like, I miss teaching the kids that I had, and I think about them frequently and what they're doing, and I love them to pieces. So just know that I'm talking shit about the system, not the children itself, because they're caught up in this and it's not their fault. You know, it really sucks for them. So we have the kids. What else is messed up? So then, you know, my kids so I'm teaching at the prep school, and then the prep school is like, they same as in Asia, right? They go to regular school and they come back for 2 hours of either English for, you know, because they're ESL and they're trying to get better with English, or they're American born Chinese and their parents are just giving them extra English and extra math. They taught math and other subjects and stuff at the school too. I was just the English teacher. So I would teach them literature and essay writing and stuff like that. One class, and then another, I had that for one English class, and another class I had like ESL. And those kids just study. And then so they would be basically in school from like 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, like 12 hours a day. They get out at 7, and then, or maybe a little bit, maybe like 5 or 6. Then, you know, one day a week they'd have like piano lessons, or either swimming lessons or lacrosse, or they'd have, you know, violin or something like that. And then on Saturday they went to like Chinese school or Japanese school or whatever their native language school. They had that all day. And it was like Sunday, I would be like, what do you guys do on Sunday? And they were like, we sleep. I was like, oh, of course, you need to sleep, you know? But they didn't have any life. They sacrificed their life for study. And what pissed me off more was, like, I found out that for the UC system, that they got extra points taken off because they were Asian. That's fucked up. Because I know my kids work their ass off. They work their souls off. So I don't care. I don't give a fuck what race you are. You work your ass off, then you should get what you deserve. Now in South Central, in like the inner cities, that's another fucked up situation, because, you know, the kids you can't really progress in an environment where it's very stressful. There's a lot of gang activity. You know, you have a lot of old resources. They purposely dumb you down. You know, they're putting shit in the food to make you crazy. They're putting you on like all these antidepressants and shit, and antipsychotics, making you flip out and lose your mind. I mean, it was just unreal. I mean, both sides of the spectrums. They're like at the other extremes, right? And then you have the Asian culture that, you know, they study all the time. They're test taking machines. They have depression issues. They have suicide issues because, you know, they base their life on like test takings and their self-worth on grades and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, and I had to get out, y'all. I had to get out. I had to. I was unhappy because of the system, and also just you know, being part of this like socialist SJW culture that teachers are programmed to teach. Like the teachers are being programmed to program the children. They're programmed to program the children. And when I realized, you know, I was watching a lot of InfoWars, and I this is back in the day, right? When InfoWars, I think at the time when I discovered it, I don't watch it anymore, but at the time, it was underground, and they had cooler, more informative guests on at the time. Now I think the content was way better and much more profound, whereas now I feel like the visuals are nice and they have a nice studio and it physically looks nice, but the content quality has gone down. It's not as educational, it's not as informative as it used to be. But when I was watching it at that time, he had AJ had Charlotte Iserby on, and I think he also interviewed, no, I saw it was the Peaceful Revolution with, oh, what's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name. We interviewed him too when we had the podcast. I can't think of his name. I know his wife's name is Lisa Aberchesky, but I can't think of his name. Oh my God, it'll come to me. Anyway, Tragedy and Hope. Oh, it's driving me crazy. I can't believe I forgot his name. Anyway, he did a whole really good interview with John Taylor Gatto, and they talked about the education system and how, you know, Charlotte Iserby talks about how this has been planned to dumb down the population, and how they had planned to do it over a certain amount of years. This is why a lot of people, you know, they think that impeach means to remove a president. You know, just simple shit that like we should know, right? Like, and then, you know, I'm always talking about this, but you should read Industrial Society, and it's fuck, my brain wheels are on today, y'all. Anyway, it's like, it's the Unabomber Manifesto, but he talks about this indoctrination process, and he talks about also like just putting that together and seeing how it's being all done through the schools, and knowing that because what I was teaching unwittingly, that I was a part of that process. I had to get out. I had to bounce. So I thought I was going to travel the world teaching English, but my dreams were crumbled. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't all that serious, but I'm actually happier now. I feel like my conscience is clearer now. My soul's clearer. I feel like I teach in other ways. I like the act of teaching, but not in the system. So anyway, yeah, are there any teachers out there? What do you feel about what's going on with the system, the teaching, the system? What do you feel about teaching? What do you think about teaching? Yeah, and I might make some videos on the coronavirus, but whatever. All right, talk to you later. Bye. Mwah. Peace and love. Bye.